Good morning and welcome back to Talking Your Walk. And today I've got with me Lisa Richards. And Lisa is a grief recovery specialist working in the Shropshire area, although she does have clients from out with the area as well. So as per usual, I'm just going to hand straight over to Lisa and ask you my first question, which is, what kind of child were you?
Thank you, June. It's lovely to be here. I'm really delighted that I could be part of this. So my first answer is I was a good girl. I wanted to be liked. I wanted to please my parents. I wanted to be popular, and I was popular. I loved my life at primary school. The difficulty is that actually changed when I went to senior school and I was taken out of my comfort zone. I went to a school where I knew no one and lots of people knew one another. And I felt like an outsider. I felt like I didn't belong.
And whereabouts was this? Where were you brought up?
I was brought up in Cheshire, and my parents lived in a 2 up, 2 down since they had got married. And they had aspirations for a better life, so we moved house as I moved schools. And I moved schools and I went to a school out of my area. I went to school in Liverpool. My mum sent me to a private school to get a better education, and I did get a better education, but I also came back with a Scouse accent.
Now, there's nothing wrong with that, especially, I mean, I love the Liverpool accent. I just adore it. I think it's fabulous, and they've had they're celebrating this morning anyway with their league win, aren't they?
Yeah,
well.
yeah, I heard that.
Yeah, so
That's
I think
fantastic.
the whole of Liverpool's dancing this morning, but that must have been quite a change as well, wouldn't it be, from primary school? I'm assuming that it was a state school and then get into private education.
Yes,
different environment again, regardless of whether it was Liverpool or anywhere else. I think it would have been quite different.
It was quite different. It was very focused, and the emphasis was obviously on academic success, which there's nothing wrong with that. But I think I missed out on that more sort of rounded education about being a good citizen and a lovely human being, which I think you learn from your peers. And that's not to say I didn't learn a lot of things from my peers, but they can be very horrible at times. And I was bullied, and I felt very sad about that, especially as my mom and my dad had sacrificed a lot to get me there. And sadly, I never told them that I was being bullied. I was the dutiful daughter and came up with the results, but inside I was miserable and I couldn't wait to leave.
Were you an only child?
No, I wasn't. That's also caused a little bit of tension because I won a scholarship through my dad's company to get there because they wouldn't have been able to afford to send me there otherwise. And my brother couldn't do that. The scheme closed because he's 3 years younger than me. And there was a tension and a resentment there because he expected to go to a private school too. I'm kind of glad he didn't, but he didn't see it that way.
Mm. It's a big family problem, isn't it? If one goes to one school and another goes to another type, I imagine that creates a whole series of problems, maybe sometimes short-lived and sometimes maybe long-term.
It's a difficult one because he had been to the same primary school as me, and to some extent I think he lived a little bit in my shadow, and he didn't thrive well there either. So in some respects it would have been good for him to go to a different school and to carve his own story out, but he didn't see it that way, and it did create a lot of tension between us until you know, more recently, when we've kind of come together and realized that, you know, we do love each other. We don't always see eye to eye, but actually, you know, he is my family.
Yeah. And the other thing is that, you know, you both, these were decisions that were made that you didn't really have any say in as such, you know, apart from, you know, the scholarship and that. But, you know, at the end of the day, from hearing that, I don't believe it was something that you really had much say in.
No, I didn't. I wished in some respects I'd just gone to a normal school.
But neither did your brother. He didn't have any say in it either, did he?
No, but, you know, what's normal? You make things normal, don't you? You normalize them yourself because you don't know any different.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So then, what did you excel at school? What did you then go on to do once, you know, the school years were over? Was it a particular subject that you liked, or?
Yeah, I loved art. I loved creating, and I wanted to do something that was creative with my life and hopefully made a difference. And that kind of opportunity or that inspiration came when a lady, and I'll never forget her name was Sue Carmichael, and she's a retired architect now. She came to speak at our school, and she inspired me to train as an architect. That's what I decided I was going to spend my life doing, to create not just beautiful things, but beautiful things that people could enjoy and experience and would make a difference to their lives. Along the way, it kind of modified a little bit because I realized that, yes, I was creative, but I didn't have that real creative spark that I could see in a lot of my fellow students. So I diversified to become an urban designer. That's what I decided that I would really excel at, and I did for 25 years. It was a great career to have. And
where did you do this? Was this locally, or where did you work?
I trained at Oxford. In Oxford, it was Oxford Polytechnic then, it's Oxford Brookes now. I actually had a choice. I had a choice to go to college in Liverpool or to go to Oxford, because I didn't actually get the A-level results that I needed to go to Sheffield University, which is where I really wanted to go to study architecture. And yeah, that was a real blow at the time, but it didn't hold me back. I ended up going to Oxford and had a wonderful student life where I felt equal to everybody. I felt as though it really gave me the independence to shine and thrive, not just academically, but that more holistic view, I think.
When you went there, I assume that was you leaving home as well for the first time?
Yeah, it was. It was a real wrench because things were not well at home. Things were not good at home. My dad suffered from Crohn's disease, and when I was a baby, he almost died several times. And certainly when I was 16, I remember he had to go into hospital for treatment, quite serious treatment. My mum, as a result, suffered from depression and anxiety about whether he would survive and whether she would be able to cope with 2 children on her own. So yes, it was a real wrench, but Mum was actually the driving force to get me a good education. This is what she wanted me to do. And I felt that almost it was fulfilling a little bit of her dream too. She felt perhaps a little frustrated. So, you know, I wanted to please her. I wanted to go along with it. It only later, you know, when you kind of look back and you start to put the pieces back together again, you start to realize what was going on. And yes, it was the first time I'd left home, and it was a big wrench because I was worried about them. I was worried about my father's health. I was worried about my mom's well-being. And unfortunately, it proved to be the case that the end of my first year, well, even before then, my mom suffered a breakdown. and she went into hospital, a private hospital, to be treated for acute depression. And that's when things started to unravel, really, when that happened, because I didn't know how to deal with it. So I just threw myself into my studies and hoped for the best. So keep calm and carry on, which is kind of what I did.
And, you know, at the end of those studies, what did you do then after your time in Oxford? Where did you go to then?
Well, before that, I'll just say at the end of my studies, and I was in for the long haul. I was there for 7 years altogether.
Wow.
I studied 3 years as a degree. I had a year out, 2 years back as a postgrad, and then we were supposed to do another year to complete doing the architecture course, except that I didn't do that because I decided I was going to be an urban designer. So my path went in a different direction. But long before that, at the end of my first year, my mum tried to end her own life, which is really when things started to badly unravel. Well, when I say badly unravel, exploded basically, except that as a family, we really struggled with that. This was back in the 1980s when there was little in the way of help and support for people like us who, my mum tried to end her own life, but actually survived. Now, usually we think of suicide as attempts as quite final and you mourn the person that you've lost because they're not physically there any longer. It happened that my mom survived, but she was no longer there because she damaged her brain in a way that she wasn't the mom I knew and loved. So I lost her that day, and she was never the same, except that she lived, and she was a living reminder of that day every day until she died in 2011.
Wow. Wow. And you're right, there wasn't a lot of help in those days, and people tended not to talk about mental health issues then either.
No.
You know, that's that was very common in those days, and you just got on with it as such,
Well,
didn't you?
yeah, we just got on with it. I tried to sort of speak to my family about it, but they're both male and they were both grieving in their own way. My dad grieving for the wife that he'd lost, my brother grieving for his mom, like me, but of course he had a different relationship with her than I had. And so I had to cope with it on my own. And I didn't tell anybody for a very, very long time, which meant that I carried this burden, this weight with me, dragging it round and not realizing really. I thought I was doing really well. To the point where it was about 7 years later where I actually collapsed under the weight of it all. I don't really know how I managed so long, to be honest. But on that day when I got up, it was a Friday and I vividly remember it, I thought, I can't see till the end of the day. I don't know how I'm going to get through this day. I really feel like I want to end this pain. So there were suicidal thoughts there, but having experienced the impact of that, I knew that wasn't an option for me. I didn't want to do that. I chose life. Mm. The difficulty for me at that point in time was I didn't know what to do. And I suffered for over an hour or more saying, what am I going to do? What am I going to do? And in the end, I did the only thing that I knew, that I trusted, which was to pick up the phone to my father. And goodness knows what he thought when I poured my heart out to him, because he thought, oh my God, possibly this is going to happen to me again. What can I do? And somehow he managed to stay calm and give me a very, very simple task to do, which was this: simply to go and see my GP, to not take no for an answer, to go. And once I'd seen her, to phone him back up and let him know that I was okay. And that's exactly what I did. And that's what saved me that day, truly saved me.
Wow. How wonderful to have a father that would listen
Yeah.
and give you that advice, because not many people have that sort of person in their life as well, do they? You know, some people don't have a father, so you were really lucky that day, weren't you, to have that wonderful man in your life? Yeah, and so, you know, was that when you were still in Oxford, or had you moved from Oxford, or?
I had finished my training and was working. I'd come to Shrewsbury by then, and I'd started working as a conservation officer for the local council. It was the only job I could get at the time, but it was a great job. It was a little bit of urban design and some conservation, and I was starting to find out about Shrewsbury and living on my own, although I was living in a shared house at the time. And I'd actually gone on a round the world trip because I'd been invited to go to a wedding in Australia, and I thought, well, why not go and really make a success of it? So I took a month off, and I had the most wonderful time. The difficulty I had that when I got to Australia and I spoke to my dad is that dawn of realization was, I thought I'd escaped, but actually I've brought all my feelings inside. They are inside me. I cannot escape. So when I came back to Shrewsbury, that's when I had my nervous breakdown, because I realized I needed help. I couldn't survive on my own. And I got help. You know, I was offered antidepressants. I knew they weren't really the answer. And I got counselling, which helped me to initially start to pick up the pieces. And then I had psychotherapy, and a wonderful man called Osman Shuley helped me do that. Sadly, he's no longer with us, but he put me back together so I could function and I could have some sort of life, even though I was still struggling. And I knew I still had this grief inside. I just didn't know. I didn't know how I was going to get rid of it. And I promised myself at that point in time, if I ever did recover, and if I ever did manage to have a life that made me truly happy, I'd help other people to do the same, because that's an amazing gift to give to somebody. And that's why I'm doing what I'm doing now, because I know what it feels like to stand in that very dark place and feel very alone. And I'm very lucky to have been able to train to stand in that dark space. If somebody wants me to, with them, hold their hand and help them out of that dark space towards the light, if they want to. But they have to want to do it. And that's the thing. It's investing in yourself. I knew that I couldn't go back. I couldn't end my own life. So I had to move forwards. I had to help myself. And I was lucky enough that there were lots of wonderful people along the way to help me. But I had to ask.
And sometimes that's a problem as well, isn't it? Because some people just don't ask. They don't know how to ask. And I think these days, you know, it's getting much easier, you know, with various TV campaigns on mental health issues and people talking about mental health issues, all the way through celebrities and royal family talking about mental health issues. You know, I think that helps a lot of people. I think it takes away the stigma of mental health as well, because for many years people, they don't understand, so they're ignorant, so they attach some sort of stigma to it. And I think it's been an amazing achievement to see so many people opening up and talking about it now, and to the point where it's actually, you know, becoming quite normal to discuss when you feel as if things get a bit too much for you, whether that's short term or long term. It's okay to ask for help. So you were an urban designer, and you did that for many, many years, didn't you? You did that for well over 20 years.
Yeah. 25 years in public sector, and it was wonderful. I created certainly in my last job where I worked for Telford and Wrekin Council, I created a place, a new settlement. For 13 years, I invested my life in placemaking to create a place for people to live, work and enjoy. The hard thing for me though was it was so delayed. I couldn't see that immediate reaction. It was only later when people started to say, well, actually, I'm not quite happy with this. Can we change it? And that's a long time to wait, whereas I wanted something more immediate. And when grief recovery came along, it came along very, very quietly, actually. It came through a well-being event through work. So, well-being events at work do work. People do go and they start to learn, actually, there are people out there that can help you, whether it's eat healthier, exercise more, look after yourself. Self-care is a big thing at the moment, and it's really, really important that we all know what to do, but actually we've got to do it because we won't see those results otherwise. So I met a lady called Phil Edmonds, who was a grief recovery specialist, and she told me, she just introduced herself because nobody had spoken to her. And she told me her story very simply, which was that she was married. Her husband decided to end his own life one day without warning, and her whole life caved in, and she struggled herself until she found grief recovery and was now helping other people. At which point I burst into tears in the middle of the office. It was, I just couldn't help it. And in that moment, I felt truly vulnerable. And I said, I don't do this anymore. I'm a survivor. And kind of pleaded with her. And she didn't judge. She just smiled really kindly. And she said, I think we need to talk a little bit more, don't you? Which was fantastic, because she created that safe space for me to be vulnerable and to feel that I could share it more openly. And that was the first time that I'd really done that. And it felt good, and I kept on doing it. She encouraged me to keep on doing it. I enrolled in her training course to be a specialist, and that was 3 years ago now. I can't believe it. It's almost 3 years ago to the day. And last night I trained as an advanced specialist to deliver this online rather than just face to face. So I was actually going to do a post this morning to say, I am truly thankful. Now I look back, this has changed my life.
Yes, and that's the thing, isn't it? These changes seem to come to people unexpectedly. They see that creep up on them. Sometimes it can be that there's something major that just stops them in their tracks, but then these changes come in and they change direction completely. And you obviously love what you're doing, and it's really, really important. And I know that you do help a lot of people. If someone was looking for your help, what's the sort of best contact details? What's your website or email, or what's the best details for people to contact you on?
Initially, I think people have to realise they're ready. If they're ready and they're open and they're willing to invest time in themselves, then that's the time that they need to speak to me. If it's for somebody who is suffering, yes, by all means, speak to me and get some more information. But ultimately, it's them that has to come to me. They have to be willing, no matter how much you want them to recover and to feel better, they have to want to do it. And it may be that you have to get to rock bottom. A little bit like me, I didn't have any choice, I never felt that I was enough, and that's why I wanted to please. But at that point, I'd had enough, I'd had enough of feeling like that. And over the years on my journey, I've realized that I am enough, and I can help people, and I don't have to be perfect. I'm a work in progress. I'm still learning myself. Every day is a school day. So yes, please get in touch by phone. I'm on LinkedIn, I'm on Facebook, and you can find me through the Grief Recovery UK website. If you put your postcode in, in the Shropshire area, I will probably come up with a number of other specialists. But now that I'm advanced trained, I can deliver that online. So I don't have to be where you are. I don't have to be in work. You know, we can do this like we are now, which is fantastic. You know, grief recovery is literally an investment of 1 hour a week for 8 weeks in total. That's including one free session where you can just speak to me, see if it's for you, see if you're ready and willing to make that commitment and invest in yourself before taking those steps. And when we were training last night, Carol said, you are driving the bus and you're the bus driver and you are stopping along the way to the destination of loving the life that you want to create for yourself. So this is really what it's all about. If you are ready to create, I'm sorry, I'm being distracted by my by my two boys who are behind the camera and making funny faces at me. So I'm sorry, people, I should be serious, but that's
no seriousness here.
That's the joy I have in my life at the moment that I really want to share with everybody. You know, it's about transformation, loving your life. That's what it's about for me.
Yeah, and it's not only just grief in the sense of losing somebody. This could be grief about all sorts of different things. So what sort of grief do you work with? You know, is it losing somebody, losing their job, or
The beauty about what I do and what I teach is that it can be for any life loss, any life change, anything that is giving you stress and you are suffering because of it. So it could be redundancy, it could be the collapse of your business, it could sadly be a miscarriage, it could be, you know, a tangible loss or an intangible loss, it could be a loss of confidence, it could be a loss of hope, loss of faith, you know, all sorts of things that you perhaps believed in that suddenly have changed and you've lost that dream of being where you thought you would be. I can't put it more plainly than it's so many things. And it's normal and natural to feel grief. We just want to try and escape from it. And actually it's better to try and address it, acknowledge it and lose it, because then we can be the best version of ourselves. And that's why I love what I do, really. It's not about grief. Carol talked last night about people called her the death lady, and she said, no, I'm the recovery lady. I'm the one that gives hope, and you can have that too.
Oh, that's wonderful. That's absolutely fantastic. And I'm so pleased to hear that you're going to be teaching this as well and doing it online.
Yeah.
It's fantastic. And when I put this up on YouTube, I certainly will be putting your contact details in the blurb that will be created for this as well. All I can say is thank you so much, Lisa. It's been an absolute pleasure to talk to you, and thanks for being so honest as well, because it does take a lot of courage to you know, talk about your journey, but it also takes a lot of courage to open up and let other people know what's happened in your life, you know. Yeah. And
thank you. That's really lovely of you to say that, because sometimes we're not open to receiving that, and you've just paid me a huge compliment. So thank you. I really, really appreciate that, June. And for the opportunity this morning, it's been brilliant to speak. I've really enjoyed it. Thank you.
Oh, you're welcome. Okay, so thanks again, and good luck. Thank you.
Best wishes. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye now.